like we were saying earlier, we're old and we're not super comfortable with the future that we're in. So
All I want is a hoverboard. That's it. That's all I wanted. I would just wanted the hoverboard. That's
uh-huh.
that's it. I mean, the hoverboard, and then I was really hoping during all this somebody would put out the alien file. I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
I thought uh, thought if
That's all
things
we
got a
need.
little squirrely, that the federal government might go, "Hey, we're just going to release all the good stuff now."
No, that was Tiger King.
Oh, it was Tiger King. That's what they did.
It's not the future we needed, but it's the future we deserve.
There you go. There you go. Hi, everybody. I'm here with Joaquin Molina of Arcanum Electric Tattoo. And what I wanted to do was talk about the local side of how COVID-19 is affecting businesses. And so I appreciate you for coming on. What we're going to do, talk a little bit about your business, then the art of it, and then we're going to talk about whatever COVID-19 is, how we get out of it, how we survive as people. Weirdest COVID-19 food, if you have one, the emergency thing where you put 3 things you didn't think worked together and they turned out okay. So that's how we'll start. How you doing over there, by the way?
Hi, I'm all right. I'm hanging tough, man. These are certainly some strange times, but I think that goes for just about everybody. So, we're all doing what we can. We're hanging tough, trying to do our part. Trying to kind of ration out not only money and food and resources, but also kind of like ration out our sanity and our boredom, and try to keep everything as level as we can, because who knows how much longer this might last. So and thank you so much for having me, even if for nothing more than, again, to break the monotony of self-quarantining.
Well, surprisingly, this is what I wanted to do about 2 months ago, and now we're just all forced to do it. So what's that saying? Necessity is something something. I don't even know. I don't even.
Mother of invention.
There you go. There you go. When you got word that the economy was shutting down late March, what was going in your mind at that time?
Well, the first thing that was happening is we were about 2 days in at that point of trying to operate responsibly and ethically, as members of this society, going through this. So for the previous 2 days before the shutdown order, we had been sort of saying, like, okay, how do we do this in a responsible way? Well, first of all, let's not allow anyone who's not being tattooed in the shop. So it's just us and our clients. That's it. The doors will be locked. No one's coming in to make appointments, leave deposits, talk to us, nothing like that. So we were limiting the number of people in the space already. And then we said, okay, no food or drink in the shop at all. Usually it's just not in the procedure areas. You can have it out front, whatever. We said, nope, none of that. Also try to keep, cell phone conversations to a minimum. Essentially anything that could generate this micro spray of saliva droplets, since this is a droplet-borne virus. We said, let's try to eliminate that as much as possible. So on the morning of the 19th of March is when we received Polis's order to halt tattooing. And there was, for a second, it was sort of like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we really, it was like, are we going to fight this thing at all? Like, how are we going to make money? How are we going to survive? Yada, yada. And at that point, it was just from the 19th to the end of March, tentatively. And we said, all right, well, the most responsible thing to do is to comply fully with the order, right? Like, there's a reason that they're giving this order. It must be for, sort of the greater good. So we'll comply with the order. And I'll tell you, the first thing we did was take home all of our valuables and then install sort of more high-tech cameras and security systems. We spent the day doing that. But really, it didn't set in, I don't think, until maybe a week or so later, because at first it was almost like, okay, this might not be that bad. We'll take a week and a half off. Everything will kind of blow over. Tattooing is incredibly hard. It's very labor intensive. So we didn't really mind having a little bit of forced, sort of furlough. But yeah, I'd say about a week or so in, we realized like, oh wow, this is like, it's no longer surreal. It's now our new reality.
When that set in financially, because a lot of businesses, I I don't think it became real in America until Tom Hanks got it. I think that was, oh well, Tom Hanks has it. But then joke aside, um, the orders start coming down, the everything's shut down, the streets are weird. There was no plan. It was just starting to shutter everything. But as a business owner, when you get the word that your industry is one of the industries that are considered non-essential, and you still have bills to pay, the lights are on in your shop, maybe you shut down the internet. What goes through your mind and of how to survive for the next however long this is? Because we don't know when this is going to come out of it. So what is going on in your mind to survive now?
Sure. So luckily, fortunately enough for us, when it all sort of hit, we immediately sort of reached out to the people we needed to reach out to and said, okay, just so that you are aware, so we're all on the same page here. This is what's going on with tattooing. This is what's going on with the shop. This is what's going on with the space, yada, yada. And they've all been very, very gracious and said, okay, look, like first things first, let's all figure this stuff out when we can. When there's some sort of return to normalcy, we'll talk about rent. We'll talk about bills.
So you found a lot of people working with you on it. Have you found people to be gracious and understanding?
I have personally, in the folks that I've had to reach out to in that sense. I know that not everyone is going to have that same experience. But what we have done, well, yeah, so to backtrack a little bit, when that financial aspect really set in for a lot of us, I think it was more on a personal level than, what about the shop? The shop was cool. We said, all right, look, we've got, some sort of cushion there that can, pay the bills, whatever, for the rest of the month. Okay. We don't have to worry until the end of April. If it goes much past that, we'll start to sweat that. But for us personally at home, not working, the four of us that work here, I think that was a little more alarming. And so I know one thing that I have considered doing or am considering doing is as that vice gets tightened more and more as the weeks go by, I will probably appeal to my clients who have appointments scheduled with me in the future to maybe, prepay for those services or leave more of a deposit down on those appointments, purchase gift certificates, things like that. Now that's, again, a unique experience for me because of the nature of my business and my wait list. Not every tattooer, even in town, is going to have that same privilege or ability, because a lot of these guys might be depending on walk-in business, whereas here, some of us typically have a 3 or 4 month long wait list. So we're able to tap into that client list, that wait list, as a resource and say, hey, everyone who's getting tattooed by me in the next 4 months, if you could all prepay for that session, I'll be fine.
When does it become critical for you?
I've yet to find out. I think so. Right now, as far as we know, the 1st of May is the tentative date for us to return to work. I'm not holding my breath for that. It'd be nice. It'd be fantastic. I'm not.
Can you make it to May? I mean, there's a lot of businesses. I mean, it's going to be a grind, but.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know that there are several businesses, tattooing or otherwise, in this town that are just not going to make it out of this. And that's unfortunate because, as well as I do, or maybe better, that Pueblo is close knit. It's almost sort of like locals only still here sometimes, and there's not a lot of like rivalry between local businesses to the extent that we want to see any of them go out. I think any local business here likes seeing other local business flourish because it's not necessarily at the expense of theirs. So we've yet to see when it gets critical, but certainly, I mean, in all honesty, I've told my friends and family, I said, look, if this thing goes much farther out than early May, I'm going to go apply for a job stocking shelves at Vitamin Cottage or King Supers or something, and you'll see me there late night in an apron, stocking shelves.
The one, I don't even know if it's an ethical question, but it's sort of a small business question in the sense of, this isn't your choice. I mean, you're adhering to the law that or the executive order in the issue that was handed down. You're appreciative of the safety measures for everybody and how widespread this is. But it's almost in a way that a lot of the state and feds said, hey, small business, we know that you're going to do this for safety, but past that, maybe some payroll help and maybe some other economic incentives out there, you guys are on your own. And, wait, in Pueblo, it certainly feels like all small businesses on their own. There's not really that structure meant to help. And there's certainly not that sort of tourism or visitor structure meant to drive people here. Even if they want to say there is, but I mean, we can argue with that at a later date. And which side I will come on that one. But
right.
As a business owner, we're only in April 6th, and and you have to now make it to May 1. I mean, this is, how do you process something like that or mentally going, not only do I have to protect my shop and my clients, but I got to look out for me.
Sure. Well, and so I think you said it really well there, where we don't have the resources that other maybe larger cities in Colorado have, such as tourism and stuff like that, which means that we are all we have. Pueblo is all Pueblo's got. We have to rely on each other to keep this thing going. And generally speaking, we do. It's not, nobody's living lavishly, I don't think, in this, but we're getting by. And so right now, it's such a strange, unprecedented time, at least for us in our lifetimes, that I'm honestly not giving a whole lot of thought to that just yet, because for now, it's still, my mode of thought is still, okay, well, we just have to do this. Once that mode of thinking kicks into sort of survival mode, then I'll be saying, okay, now what do I need to do? For now, it's sort of, what can I do? And I hope it doesn't get down to what do I need to do. But tattooers in particular and tattoo shops are in a really unique, to put it gently, we're screwed in a really unique way here, because our industry, and I know some will sort of take offense to that term, but our industry, if you will, is almost completely unique in the way that it functions. So we don't have any employees, so we don't qualify for payroll loans. We don't have health coverage. We don't pay into unemployment. We don't have 401ks to tap into, Social Security, nothing like that. That all falls on the individual tattooer. Everyone here is essentially a private contractor, a subcontractor. And so it's sort of on their shoulders, like, well, how well have you set yourself up to receive benefits right now? And if you haven't at all, guess what? You're not receiving any benefits. And so it's a pretty strange place to find ourselves. But we, most of us, I should say, knew that going in, that tattooing is like, can be seen as almost this cash grab for some people, where it's like, look, all you get in tattooing are cash in hand and fringe benefits. So, grab what you can.
And, and, and it's really, I mean, in terms of small business, it might be unique, but in terms of creatives, the shops that are just out there doing single art, they're just artists, other creatives, galleries, certain things like that. They're in the same boat. I mean,
Sure.
They're celebrated. I mean, you as a tattooer give back to the community, whether it's just an art, but also there's other ways that you do it in terms of owning a business. It's just naturally part of it. But at the same time, as much as those are celebrated, a company that's out, say in Pueblo or Colorado Springs, out at the airport, employing 100 people, they make widgets. Those people are thought of, hey, those are essential. You guys can keep making widgets. We're proud to have you. Joaquin, you put some art on somebody's back and you're like, yeah, I mean, we appreciate you. We like that you do that. But the argument there is to the people, your creative engine and the others at your business, there's a soul to Pueblo that you can't replace. There's a soul to Colorado Springs of those tattooers. You can't replace this. So what happens if the creative soul gets wiped out because of this?
Well, presumably someone will pick up the mantle at some point if that happens. And I think it's going to take, certainly it'll take more than 6 weeks for that to occur. But again, being such unprecedented times right now, it could very well be, we could be looking at months, right? They say a year and a half till a vaccine. So who knows where this could lead? They say this could be seasonal, right? Returning next winter and fall, winter, and spring. So the thing about tattooing is that it's being born of like a rebellious sentiment and generally attracting people of a rebellious nature. Is tattooing always finds a way to survive. I mean, throughout history, tattooing has been driven underground so frequently, so often, so many times, and yet here we are. We're living now in probably the peak age of tattooing, and so it's only ever come back stronger and bigger, and I suppose more organized. Even we're such a self-regulating, self-policing industry that for the most part, everyone leaves us alone. We don't have FDA breathing down our necks. We don't have a lot of government agencies breathing down our necks. In Pueblo, all we need to operate is a business license and an annual inspection from the health department. They say, yep, cool. You're not doing anything you shouldn't be. Great. Other than that, everyone understands that we're very self-policing. We are the ones who foster and maintain tattooing. And so we want to act as stewards for it. We don't want to contaminate tattooing with all these external factors. We want it to sort of remain what we love. So we're not going to do anything that could compromise that. But on the other hand, that does include keeping it alive when others try to sort of stifle it. And maybe that goes for other art mediums as well, but this is the one that I know.
Well, let's move into some of that rebellion and the rebellious nature of it.
Sure.
I mean, outside of opening and then endangering everybody. I know you're not going to do that. How do you know what I've not seen in this, and because I think it's so new and everybody's trying to react to it. And I think it's temporary in terms of coronavirus and COVID, that nobody knows what to do with it yet. So it's just sort of, well, we'll stay home, and we'll try to work where we can, and we don't really know. But there's no sort of protesting the virus right now. Sort of the anger at some of the hardships coming down,
Well,
and you see it, and where I can liken it to was back when Colorado Springs had its fire. There was sort of wildfire teas came out, and then everybody was, we're so mad at this, we're going to make a teas and we're going to unite around it. For tattooing and the industry in Southern Colorado, what is it that is sort of, you can put your stamp on this and say, a big FU to the disease, a big FU to closing down? What do you think that looks like? The protest of this thing, the rebellion of this thing.
so there's an intersection, I think, where rebellion meets responsibility. And that's, I think, what we should be concerned with. If we really want to see an end to this, we need to be responsible, which means not endangering the public right now, not endangering ourselves, not spreading this thing, which means being shut down. I think that's the biggest component in this, because once again, we're all that we have. No one is coming to save us, right? I mean, eventually there may be a vaccine, but short of that, this thing is so non-discriminate. No one is safe. No one's coming to save us. All we have are ourselves. And that's what I think makes people really uncomfortable with even being angry right now, is that if you're really angry, then stay in and do your part, right? But also, I think it should be noted that so many people fall through the cracks every day when there's not, a pandemic emergency going on. So maybe, hopefully, we come out of this with a greater understanding and a greater empathy and compassion for the people who, have always had to live wondering how they're going to pay their bills, their rent, where they're going to get food. Hell, where are they going to sleep tonight? Are they going to eat tomorrow? These aren't things that I've had to worry about yet, and I'm in a pretty sticky situation, and by the end of the month, yeah, maybe I will, have to address those issues. But this is so far, tentatively 6 weeks out of my entire life, right? So hopefully we can come out of this, one, with a greater preparedness for if it ever happens again, and two, with a greater understanding of what happens to people when they're denied access to basic resources to lead fulfilling lives.
And as well as anybody here in Pueblo, there's so many on the fringe of that. There's so many. I mean, 45% are considered in poverty or around poverty. I mean, that's, if the county has 160,000, less than 80,000 people are on the fringes of that, on the fringes.
Right.
I think 40,000 are on Medicaid, just to give those people out there some idea of some numbers. But moving into the art side of it, how would you address the rebellion of this through your art when you can open up again? What does that look like to try to maintain this sort of spirit of rebellion? Or do you rebel against this weird time? I mean, is it just, this was a blip on the radar, we'll just keep doing the same thing?
No, I don't think that there can, or at least I don't think that there should be, a return to complete normalcy before this, because that comes inherently with complacency. You remember how complacent we were before all of this. So I think that when we return to work and we return to producing artwork and tattooing, I would like to see it be a little bit more gracious, I suppose. Gracious to the people who are supporting it, the people who are paying us to do it, the people who allow us to do it. I think it's easy in tattooing to be tattooing from one's ego. And it's difficult to remember, like, nothing I'm doing particularly matters. It's super important to me and to the person wearing it, but in the scheme of things, it's not going down in the annals of history by any means. So maybe we'll have a greater understanding of that too, and say, look, I'm putting a tattoo on you, and that's difficult, and it takes skill, or what have you, but more than anything, it takes you being willing to let me do it. So thank you for that. I know you don't need it, and I know they're expensive, and they're painful, and they take a long time. So on paper, there's no reason for you to get one. Yet here you are.
And would you say that extends to, I mean, in the last 20 years, we've gone from tattoos being generally hidden, always, to you start seeing the uh, the envelope get pushed and get pushed and get pushed to, no one's trying to hide it at the workplace. There's a few places left, but now it's sort of, unless you work at sort of the DA's office and you can have the sleeve, just wear a long shirt,
Right.
and you're great. And I know that you've met those people, and in your time that it's gone from being cover it all, to being counterculture, to, I'm not saying I'm going to be cool because I don't have a tattoo. I'm definitely not saying that. But there's might be a time where the influx happens, and
right.
and so it's a very weird time. And to bring it back to this point, you're in an industry that doesn't matter, in your words, in the long scheme of things, but so many people value it. And
Right.
yet here you are on a fringe of this crisis that is just washing over the country. So do you think that there needs to be a reassessment of how we value creatives in our society?
Yes, absolutely. And for better or worse, the practicality of that appreciation generally tends to be monetary, right? If you value these creative people in your community, support them by purchasing or consuming the products that they make, because that's just the world that we live in right now. If this whole thing sends us into a barter system, maybe I'll still be able to eke out some sort of deal. I'll say, yeah, I'll do your sleeve. You give me, 100 pounds of potatoes or what have you.
I mean, that's going to be a rough future. That's going to be a rough future. I'm going to tell you, because
right.
I mean, you can give away your tattoos. I mean, on my end, I don't know if I'm getting any potatoes for news, so I'm screwed in this future.
Well, art is such an abstract concept that,
but it's valued. That's the problem. Like it's your stuff is valued, and this is what we say abstract, and you say it doesn't matter, but it's valued in a way that is intangible. But I'll put it this way, and for people out there that either don't have tattoos or don't appreciate the industry, or they just get something of their own, how many of your clients, whether they were tattooed a year ago or 5 years ago, go, hey, Joaquin, that thing that you did, I really love it. Every time I see it, I just really love what you did. I mean, that's almost the perfect sort of ascension of what art should be, right? The person who got it appreciates it for what it is. Might not matter to you. You just did it. You like the work, but it wasn't what you wanted. I might look at it and go, it's not what I would do. But for that person, it's the ultimate expression of pleasure, of gratitude, of whatever. So in this instance, and you say it doesn't matter, but it's sort of like it does matter to so many people.
Exactly.
And yet it's just something that, oh, you're creative. Joaquin's out of a job. Guess you should go work at Target because that's good.
No, that's the interesting part, that is that dichotomy, right? Is it's such an abstraction, and it doesn't really matter in the end. So why does it matter so much? Why does it feel this void that nothing else can? Why are the arts so important while simultaneously being such a loose concept that no one can even tell you really what it is? But it's important to so many. It's right now, it's helping a lot of people from sort of losing their minds in quarantine. They're turning to books, movies, music, any other medium that we can think of to keep them sane.
And it's a thing where we live in a time. I mean, 2 months ago, there's a certain group of people that lean a certain way on the political spectrum that go, we don't like anything from Hollywood. And right now, you're stuck at your home watching everything Hollywood put out.
Right.
I mean, it's a weird. This is a weird inflection point, and I think for creatives, and the one thing why I wanted to talk to you first was, in general, it doesn't matter, and yet in the law, I mean, I'll take journalism for example. It doesn't. We try to cover the story. We try to do certain things. I'm talking to you. It's important. But let's be real. That nurse who's over there at the hospital right now, putting a tube down an 80-year-old person to save their life, that matters right now.
Yes.
But I know for a fact that you have tattooed some of those people that are saving lives, and they're going to come back when this is over and go, I just need an expression of what I had. Can you do this? Can you do that? How do we balance those two things between the essential position of life, nurses, doctors, people saving lives, paramedics, first responders? You've worked on them all, police officers, attorneys, you've done it all. Coming to you for their escape, for their art, for their expression of individuality. And yet we don't value it in terms of a larger sense in society. How do you bridge those two dichotomies together, and not go and feel a little frustrated at the end of this, going, yeah, I'm not essential, but at the same time, man, I'm going to tattoo you in a couple weeks, and you're not going to give us any sort of economic benefit. You just hope we can survive. It's kind of unfair.
Absolutely. I think for me personally, the way that I balance it is I try to balance it with a certain sense of again, just sort of graciousness, and saying, okay, right now, I'm not in survival mode just yet. Those who are, that's more important. It's more important that they receive any sort of benefits right now. And then those who are essential to keeping infrastructure running, to keeping people having access to those resources, are important as well. So I just sort of need to understand and step outside of myself a little bit, I think, step back a little bit and say, look, I have some money in the bank. I have some money in my wallet. It's not very much. The people around me, my landlord, for instance, is being extremely gracious and saying, look, at the end of April, if we need to sit down and talk about all this, then we will. All right. If we don't, then we won't. So I'm not feeling a whole lot of pressure there just yet. Now, again, I do understand that is a certain privilege that's not extended to everybody who's been deemed a non-essential worker right now. So I certainly don't think that they shouldn't feel as though it's unfair. I don't think they shouldn't be allowed to feel angry about it or upset about it. I suppose I just hope that everybody is being very honest about the things that they need right now. And like, do you really need that? Or are you just taking it now in case you can't get it later? Which may be valid in and of itself. But did you need to grab all of that toilet paper? Or could you have done with 1 or 2 packs?
Yeah,
And now you don't need it, get it.
we never figured out why there was a toilet paper run. The soap run, the the Clorox wipes.
Right.
That we got. Everybody can understand that. I mean, there's some guy that bought a lot of toilet paper, and he doesn't know how to move that right now.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? Good. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not sort of the executor of karmic repercussion, but I don't mind seeing people get their karmic repercussions.
No, I mean, some of those guys that got raided. But what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about art and a tattooing, because
Sure.
I find it fascinating, and the reason why I think that for me, that I find that this version of expression is so unique, and I'll set it up by saying, if you were to go and paint a mural, people can see it. If you were to go and be a famous painter and you get at the Met or the Denver Art Museum or something in France, people can kind of see that.
Sure.
This medium it's really intended for maybe one person, maybe a few other people that get to enjoy it, but it's really meant for the sole purpose of the individual.
Yes.
So and not to go back on COVID-19, but if you could put any tattoo you wanted, and now that you've been in isolation, ruminating about what you want to do, how do you express yourself through art, what's something that you want to design, or something that you really, really want to do, either art or something that's challenging, or something that you want to, what is that for you?
Okay. Well, I've at least for the last maybe 5 years, 4 or 5 years at least, my work has been going in a particular direction, and that was a very deliberate choice that I made, where I said I'd really like to focus on just this type of work, and really sort of come to be known for that. And it's finally starting to kind of come to fruition now, where I think my clientele or new clients are saying like, oh yeah, well, he does this kind of stuff, and if you want this kind of stuff, come to him.
So for those people that don't that wouldn't know what that is, how would you describe your stuff?
So my preferred style to work in is large scale Japanese tattooing, and it's a very nuanced style.
Let's just talk about it a little bit. I have it on. You sent me these. I'm going to see which one you want to talk about first.
Surprise me.
Oh,
there's some back pieces in there.
There's some back pieces. You know what? Let's do the arm. And you know which one I'm talking about. I'm gonna pronounce it wrong. The elephant, the geisha.
Ganesh. Yes.
Ganesha.
Yeah. Lord Ganesh. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know, man. I just, I'm surprised I got your name right. This is why they don't give newspaper people a microphone, because we're not. Come on.
Doing fantastic.
No. I mean, this is like, I don't know what this is. This is the future, man. We're in the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
We didn't get hoverboards. We got this.
Yeah. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. No.
I still feel like it feels like I'm in Demolition Man.
Yeah. So, it'll be up on the screen, but you know what you're talking about. So just go ahead and and guide us through this.
Yeah, so this tattoo is of Lord Ganesh, who is a Hindu deity, the remover of obstacles, son of Shiva and Parvati, Lord of new beginnings, and actually, John, generally considered to be sort of the patron of writing.
Oh,
Yes.
well, then I really offended some gods right now, man. Oh
So
man, I'm not.
if
Oh man.
if people know one thing about Hinduism, it's going to be Om, right? The bija seed syllable Om. If they know two things about Hinduism, it's the elephant-headed guy. So Ganesha is actually the personification of the syllable Om. And that's why you generally see him depicted with that symbol. So that's sort of, you know, the concept behind the imagery. The tattoo itself, this is one of my favorite things that happens in tattooing is the spontaneity of it. This client had a full sleeve by me already and came in and said, "Hey, I want to start my other arm." And so he said, "Yeah, I don't know what I want to do just yet, but you know, I'll figure something out." Well, his appointment day came and he showed up and I said, "All right, what do you want to do?" He says, "I don't know." I said, "All right, man, well, I booked you for the full day, you know, the whole day. So whatever you're thinking, we can get it started." And so he said, "All right, well, how about, you know, a big Ganesha?" And usually we see Ganesha either seated on a lotus or dancing. And so it's usually a full body depiction. This time I said, well, why don't we just do a head? That way we can really like kind of tweak out on the details in the jewelry. So luckily he was into that idea, and I drew this on the spot. I said, "All right, cool. Give me, you know, maybe an hour or something, and I'll have a drawing for you." And so that's another thing that people might not realize who haven't experienced tattooing is that the type of tattooing that I do is fully custom. Every tattoo, each design is essentially a commissioned piece of artwork that I have to research and study, conceptualize, compose, draw, and figure out all before I've even started tattooing you.
And then do it all
And
over again.
yeah, exactly. Then I start the hard part, which is tattooing. Um, so this was no different. We drew it on the spot. Thankfully, he liked the design, and it was done in I want to say 3 sessions. I think we did. The first session was outlining and then laying essentially like a value study in grayscale, and then letting that heal, and then 2 sessions of color on top of that. And in that photo, I think that tattoo is healed maybe a year or a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of the white highlights.
So if how would you, for a novice, describe, or somebody that doesn't appreciate the artistry of tattooing, and you were to describe your style and what it is visually that separates you out from others, how would you describe it?
Sure. So I think that the crux of my tattooing that makes it desirable to people regularly is that I feel like my tattooing is strong. I feel like I produce strong tattoos. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're remarkable, but I think they're strong. They're impactful. And that's another very deliberate choice. I try not to ever do anything that's very obvious, be that, you know, in the design or in the composition, the dynamics of the way that the piece is put together, the color palette, the line weights, whatever the case may be, light source, anything like that. I try to never do the most obvious thing. I don't like when you see something and you say, "Yeah, I guess that's exactly how I would have done it." You know, that makes sense. I like it more when you see something in visual art and you say, "Wow, I would have never thought to do it like that." You know, so I think that keeping that in mind for me every step of the way helps distinguish my tattooing from other tattooers in town who maybe are more focused on realism or being more graphic or being more illustrative. I'm really just focused on being impactful. And generally that means clean, solid, good.
In what I'm pulling up now is the and this will be on the screens, but the full back. And so I guess warning to the children out there, if you're
All right, I know which
not listening on this, you know, I don't, or if you're offended, I don't know, man. I don't know anymore.
if you don't like butt, look away.
Yeah, sure. You know, but this is what you were talking about before we started. Even on the uh, on your own motif. So, what guide us through this? How long was this the client's art that they wanted, or did they just go, "Hey, man, go crazy, and we'll see what happens"?
So that's usually the way that this process starts. Is the client will tell me, I have the concept and I have the placement, or at least the space where I'd like it to sit. Other than that, that's why I'm coming to you. You do your thing. So this client in particular, she and I kind of went back and forth a few times with different concepts and stories from Japanese mythology, folklore, history, theater, art, all these different elements that make up Japanese tattoos. And so she decided that she really liked this concept of the kitsune, which is a fox, a holy fox. And so for this image, we chose to go with one of the sort of folk tales about how foxes can shapeshift, and they're mischievous characters. So one of the things they like to do is shapeshift into these beautiful young women to fool young men into taking them out and whining and dining them and stuff. And then at the end they turn back into a fox and scurry off into the field. So a young kitsune has to have either a leaf or a skull above their head in order to shapeshift. And so we went with the skull motif here. You can see the robes, the kimono of the young lady. The fox has multiple tails. I think this one we did, I want to say 5 tails, maybe 7. For every 100 years that the fox is alive, it grows another tail. Once it reaches 1,000 years old, it turns white or gold, and it's now a holy fox. And it doesn't need those objects in order to shapeshift. So we chose a younger fox so that we could incorporate the skull. You can see the fox is dancing there on gold gilded peonies, which are what appear on the cheeks there.
Sure. Sure.
Particularly tender spot to get
scientific term.
Yeah. And then in the background, behind kind of a little layer of cloudy mist, we see a little bit concealed the image of what's called a hanya. Hanya is not exactly a demon per se. Hanya is a depiction in Japanese theater of a scorned woman. And so the expression that you see is actually, it's not necessarily rage or anything like that. It can be, but generally it's sorrow. It's sadness that you're seeing in that expression. And the hair is disheveled, and the darker the flesh of that hanya is, the more that woman has given herself over to that rage and sorrow. So the whole tone of that back piece is meant to be sort of playful on this side, and then quite a bit darker and more somber on this side, which is why that's sort of concealed, to show that sort of one thing can lead to another, and nothing good really ever comes from mischief.
How long did it take you was this the finished piece? And how long did it take you to work on this?
I think in that photo, we had yet to complete a little bit of background in the upper left. And then we also have since added a Buddhist pattern on the drapery of the robes. That was pretty tedious in itself. So it's not quite the finished product in that photo there, but I would say at that point we were maybe 30 or 40 hours in. to that tattoo. And the only thing that we used a stencil for, that is to say, drew it out on paper, made sort of a print of it, and then transferred that onto her back, was the fox itself. And every other part of that tattoo was done completely freehand.
So when you're doing this and you're in the groove and you're working on somebody, and where do you go as an artist when you're trying to draw this out? I mean, are you thinking about are you just in the zone where you're not thinking about anything? Are you thinking about what to do for dinner that night? Is it where do you zone out on, or is it just when you get done with a piece like this and you work on it for a few hours, when you go home at night, you're like, my brain is done. I have to sleep now.
Yeah, absolutely. I do all of my drawing here at the shop. I don't draw at home. I've got a cat, and so like it would be impossible for me to try to draw at home. Any other cat companions out there will know how hard that would be. And I don't draw on any sort of digital platform. I draw with markers and colored pencils on paper, including for these large scale drawings that I do draw to scale. So the drawing of that fox is about 2 feet tall in real life. That's the size I sketched it and drew it. So I come to the shop generally at night or early in the morning before we open. And I put on anything from, Dexter Gordon and Thelonious Monk, something that I can really just kind of put on and bop my head to, or maybe some heavy metal or whatever it may be. And yeah, I just work and work and work and work and work and draw. And by the time I know it, sometimes it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I've been here for 6 hours, 7 hours drawing this thing. And I'm almost further away from it than when I started. I said, okay, well, I spent 8 hours on this drawing only to find out that I don't like how I draw this thing. Mm-hmm. So I got to come back in the morning and rethink it.
Because they're coming in like 10.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's another deliberate part of my process is I don't give myself a whole lot of time to draw. If it's a really large design, a full back piece, full sleeve, something like that, I'll start the drawing maybe the weekend before the appointment. Otherwise, I generally draw it the night before or the morning of, because I feel like that pressure is such a driving force for me, where I say, okay, I've only got a few hours till they're here. So the first thing I draw needs to be the best thing I can draw. Otherwise, if I was drawing weeks and months in advance, I know myself and I would draw 5 different versions of it, none of which I would be that committed to, and then do it last minute anyway.
Well, I think it's sort of, creatives always, when you're forced to do something quickly, it's amazing how creative you can be, isn't it?
Right, absolutely.
Like if you had 3 months to do, I said, hey, Joaquin, do this tattoo for me. And I get 3 months, like, great, I'm excited for it. I love it. Like, I don't have it. And then the day before, you're up till 3 a.m, just going, I still don't have it. And now he's coming in an hour, coming in at 9. He's got 2 hours here. Whatever. Let's just do it.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of that sentiment of like, screw it, we'll do it live.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Has that ever burned you? Have you ever got super burned by doing that?
Oh, absolutely. I remember vividly the day I almost quit tattooing. There was a consultation for a guy that wanted a whole Vietnam themed sleeve. This whole battle scene and helicopters and landscapes and soldiers and all this stuff. And I remember in my head during the consultation saying, okay, I've got to really do a lot of research for this and a lot of drawing. Not only does it have to be drawn well, it also has to be right. The right kind of helicopter, the right number of blades, the right kind of guns on the soldiers, whatever, right kind of uniforms. I said, all right, I got to do a lot of studying and a lot of drawing for this one. And he walked out the door, and I forgot about it. I said, I've got 4 months till I have to even start thinking about this thing. And then I come to work one day, and I look at my schedule, and I said, I don't recognize this name, but it says sleeve. That's all it said in the schedule, sleeve. I said, I'll just draw it on when he gets here, you know. I'm an artist. I'll just draw it on.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy, this guy walked through the door, and my heart sank through the floor, right? And I said, no, anything but that sleeve. And I had to just on the spot say, like, okay, so here's kind of what I'm thinking, and we're going to draw a lot of this on. And luckily I managed to make it work, but I don't think my heart stopped racing until he left, you know?
Was he happy with it? Was he?
Yeah. And you know what? So was I. I was actually really happy with it. I thought it was it came out really cool. But that kind of scared me into making sure that I knew when something was out of my league, and I needed to really buckle down and devote myself to figuring it out. You know, if it's say maybe a skull and some roses, not that there's anything wrong with that. It's one of my favorite subject matters to tattoo. But I know that I can draw a skull and a rose, you know, well, with I don't have to come back and study a skull every time I want to sit down and draw one. But so it made me sort of realize, like, hey, you're not as hot shot as you might think.
Yeah.
So
totally,
understand you need to buckle down and study.
Let's do one more. Artist choice on this one. We'll do one more. Artist choice. Anyone you want to pull out of the thing to feature?
Okay, we had talked briefly about this. There's a little rose cameo with some banners that says either conquer or perish.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a bit of an older tattoo. I think it's maybe 2 or even 3 years old now, and it's a fairly personal tattoo for that wearer, for that client. It's her family's motto, either conquer or perish. And I think the rose itself, that tea rose, was significant to her family as well. But I think that I included it, one, because I like the tattoo. I like the way it came out a lot. And two, as we were talking about before the interview started, it's sort of particularly relevant now to these weird circumstances that we find ourselves in. And we're all affected by it, maybe not necessarily equally, but to some capacity, we're all affected by this. And so it really comes down to, like, maybe we don't get to think a whole lot about what to do. We just have to do it or perish, right? We just do it or we don't. That's all that's left right now. And later on, maybe we can look back and say, what did we do wrong? What could we have done more? What could we have done better? But I think right now it's like, either do or don't. That's all you got.
Have you had any of those moments where you, in this weird time of going, the sort of self-actualization, we're getting high in this whatever theory of theology or book you want to pull out right now. We all have our own.
I literally have like the journey to self-actualization or self-realization.
There you go.
By Prabhupada right now.
There you go. Let's. But you say either conquer or perish. So we'll end on that one.
Sure.
How is it affecting you personally and changing you? It's early. I mean, we're just all trying to survive. But I think that this is a moment in our lives, which let's hope to God we don't have to do this every year.
Right.
Because I really don't know what we'll just be insane. But
yeah.
Being the singular focused point in our own lives, and everybody's sharing this commonality of life. How has that made you, Joaquin, sort of reflect on yourself and look inward rather than just got to get this tattoo? I got to get some more bucks. I got to go, do yoga. I got to go hang out with friends. I got to go do this. But have you had time to pull in and really, really take stock and just go? And I'll give you this example because this is, uh, I think it was when I was at a press conference and I'm sitting there with other journalists and I'm going, guys, this clearly is not social distancing, and we're at a conference or at a media thing for the health department. Like, we're not adhering to any standards right now.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm like, so I came back and I thought, and I got the fears as you do. You're like, oh man, I don't know. Was that person coughing? And then I don't know what was happening. And then you're like, oh, and then you read the stories on how it can impact you. You see your Facebook messages, and then their parents have it, or their grandparents have it, and then you get somebody died. And so internally for me, it has had some self-reflection of going, journalism is important, not dying, also important. But it's also said what changes need to be made. So in your instance, I'm not going to talk about mine, but in yours, have you gone inward and started to reassess some things?
Yes, definitely. I and this happened at a very strange time in my life where I had already been sort of doing a bit of introspection, but this has really kicked that into high gear. So what I mean by that is that I went into this whole thing very, very focused on something in particular, and now I'm realizing, like, oh, that's probably not something that I'm going to realize. That's probably not something that's ever going to come to fruition. So the question that I'm left with now is, okay, well, at the end of this, and again, heaven willing that there's an end of this, who do I want to be? Who do I want to come out of this as? Certainly not the person I went into it as, and that's just me. But
do you want to get deep for a minute? And who's the person you went into it? Because honestly, God, we got like 30 more days of this. So, and however much time you want to do. So, how deep you want to get into yourself? I mean,
well, without
you don't have to give details, names. You don't have to.
Right.
I mean, if your enemies are on this list, we don't have to name them. We'll do that when we get off the call.
No, it's quite the opposite, but I had to distill it down as much as I can. Like, I had to understand, okay, I need to dedicate myself to something once all of this is sort of once it's all shaken out the way it's going to shake out. I don't think that what I had wanted was or is going to be realized. So I needed to dedicate myself to something, because otherwise I'm going to just dwell on what I didn't get or what I didn't achieve, what I didn't realize before all of this. So I've turned to, Vedic literature, Vedic philosophy, Bhakti yoga, and, that sort of thing personally for me. And I said, okay, this is what I want to dedicate myself to. And I can do that through my tattooing as well, and make sure that my tattooing after all of this is serving some sort of purpose, is in service to others, right? Not just in service to me and my own ego. That's why I keep coming back to this idea of being gracious about everything. I think that if we come out the other side of this, I want my tattooing to be a reflection of this spirit of service to others, instead of just, yeah. What do you want? Yeah, sit down, slap it on you, couple $100, get out of here.
Do you think that would have happened prior to this? Do you think you would have had that epiphany or that thought? Because I'm going through a little bit in mine's different. I think mine is more about who we need to be as media. That's, you look at the professional thing. I think it's also some personal things that happened, a death, some loss in my own life, and you think, you start to take stock of the thing, of your own mistakes, of your own hubris. I think that it's sort
Right.
of, I mean, certain things just don't matter. That thing that, being angry at somebody because they didn't respond to a text fast enough, or you
I
know.
told you I didn't want to get into that.
Oh, was that you? Was that?
No, no.
but do you think that would have happened if it wasn't if none of this happened? Do you think you would have that this would have made you think about some stuff differently?
I think there's a good possibility that I would have arrived at that eventually. But I do think that this whole crisis, these circumstances, have forced us all to just sort of be alone with our thoughts and in our own heads so often. For so much of the day. I don't know about anybody else, but like, I live alone. It's me and my cat, and so yeah, all I do is bother my cat or think about stuff like this all day, pretty much. So I'm sure that at some point I might have come to this realization, but I definitely think this kicked it into high gear. It really expedited the process for me, saying like, okay, it's not that what you were focused on was not important. On the contrary, it was so important to you that now that you have to sort of let go of it, you need to replace it with something just as important. Right. And so for me, that's saying, okay, I'm going to really sort of take this plunge and devote myself to something that I've been interested in for a very long time, and make these lifestyle changes to say like, yes, I am a devotee of this philosophy, and instead of sort of saying, that stuff's kind of cool. I think that's pretty cool. Now I'm like,
Yeah.
no. I'm comfortable with taking steps to say I'm a devotee of these tenets.
It's cool, man. Do you think your cat has any epiphanies during this time with you? Do you think
Yes.
your
Yeah.
cat has gone, man, I don't know.
Yeah. I think his epiphany is probably like, I always thought I wanted him to stay home and play with me all day, but now that I have that, I cannot wait for him to go back to work. That was
Well, it's. I mean, if he starts giving you the look, and the cat look, the look,
Oh yeah.
dogs don't have the look. Dogs are
No.
like, hey, buddy, you're my friend all the
Perfect.
time. But cats are like, I'll turn on you. I will turn on you
Yeah.
if this doesn't go well.
Right. No, my cat's probably saying, Jesus Christ, like all he does is like listen to sitar music and cry all day. What is up with this guy?
On the next episode of whatever we're calling this, a very special. We'll just listen to music and cry. We'll listen to sitar music and cry all day. That'll be our.
Please invite me for that one.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think we can have like 50 people in one of these things. We'll get somebody to do it, and then we'll all just see who's crying the most, and have them talk about some feelings.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
hey, man, on the end of this, for the people that have stuck around when this goes out, we appreciate them, but I'll give the last few seconds and the last few minutes to you. Anything that you want to give out, promote, tell people to come back, or if you have something that they can help you out with, and say, hey, we're a bunch of starving artists too. Well, how can they help you out during this time?
Yes. So, and I've said this recently too on another platform, but like, I think it's very important to put out there that I'm not just speaking about myself as a tattooer or my shop as an institution of tattooing in this town. There are so many incredible tattooers, so many powerhouse shops in this town now. Everyone's putting out incredible work and forcing guys like me to keep up with them, which I really appreciate. And so I would appeal to everyone, like, I'm not telling you come and get tattooed by me or even come and get tattooed at Arcanum, but get tattooed. Once you're able to, again, get tattooed, keep your appointments, tip. But until that time, you could really help us out by, again, prepaying for the appointments you have scheduled. leaving a deposit to schedule a new appointment. If your tattooer happens to work in other media, commission a painting or a drawing from them, or digital design. Purchase gift certificates. Bring us food. Oh, we love food. If you have a personal relationship with your tattooer, please like Facebook them, text them, call them, whatever, and say, hey, can I drop food off on your porch?
Hey, the Grubhub will do it. You could just pay through Grubhub or whatever, one of those.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've never used Grubhub. I'm like afraid of Grubhub a little bit. So
they got others. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even know. I don't even know what exists out there. There's a whole bunch of them. But
yeah, no, like we were saying earlier, we're old and we're not super comfortable with the future that we're in. So
all I want is a hoverboard. That's it. That's all I wanted. I just wanted the hoverboard. That's it. I mean, the hoverboard, and then I was really hoping during all this somebody would put out the alien file. I thought if things got a little squirrely, that the federal government might go, hey, we're just going to release all the good stuff now.
No, that was Tiger King.
Oh, it was Tiger King. That's what they did.
It's not the future we needed, but it's the future we deserve.
There you go. Oh, man. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for talking. I hope you had a good time talking about this stuff too. We'll check in and see how you're doing at the back end of this.
Great. All right.
So, hey, Joaquin Molina, Arcanum Electric Tattoo here in Pueblo, Colorado. And really for everybody that's listening, there is no other way to support artists than to support artists. So,
absolutely right.
I mean, there's no charity coming out this way. So, to everybody listening and watching, give to these guys, because while they might not be, the corporate sign on the way into town, they are the soul and they are the art of a place, and they give us something that you can't get anywhere else. So, hey, Joaquin, appreciate it. Stay safe out there.
Thank you so much.
And then, hey, when we can hang out at the garage, which is right over there, we can't even use it. We got this fancy place. We can't even use it. So you have to come by, and we'll have to do this in person next time.
Oh, I'd love to. I'm looking forward to it already.
All right, man.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Take it easy.